Hi, today we're going to be taking notes on 8-6, which is factoring x squared plus bx plus c. And our objective for today is to learn how to factor these trinomials in this form, and then also we're going to be solving equations in that form. So let's take a look at example 1. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to factor this. And in order to do this, you're going to look at the C term. The C term is the one all by itself. And you want to think of factors or numbers that multiply to give you 20. Okay, so we're looking for numbers that multiply to give us 20, but also add to give us 9. So the first thing I do is I list the factors of 20. 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5, and that's it. And then you look to see which one of those add up to 9. And here we are. 4 and 5 will add up to 9. So we do our two sets. So this one is different from the GCF. This one gets two sets of parentheses. You're going to put your x in front because that's how we're going to get this x squared over here. And then our two numbers are 4 and 5, and that's a positive 4, so we write plus 4 and a positive 5. And there it is factored. X plus 4 times x plus 5. That is your answer for example 1. Let's look at another example. Okay, so now our C term here is 12. So, but this time we want them to multiply to give us 12, but add to give us a negative 8. Okay, so let's first think of the factors of 12. We've got 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. And remember, anytime that you would have a number multiply to give you a positive number, but add to give you a negative number, both of those numbers need to be negative. Because two negatives when you multiply gives you a positive, but when you add them, they are still negative. So then we look to see which ones of those will multiply to give us 12 and add to give us negative 8. And we see here that it is negative 2 and negative 6. So just like in example 1, you're going to do your two sets of parentheses. We see that our first term is x squared, so I'm going to put x and x. And then we've got a negative 2, so I write minus 2, and a negative 6, so I write minus 6. And there it is, factored. X minus 2 times x minus 6. Let's look at example 3. Now this time we have we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us a negative 15 and add to give us a positive 2. The factors of 15 are 1 and 15 and 3 and 5. But remember, we want it to give us a negative 15 and a positive 2. Well, in order for it to be negative, one of our numbers needs to be negative. And in order for it to add to give us a positive, the bigger number, the 15 and the 5, those would have to be our positives. So I'm going to make these negatives. And which one of these adds up to a positive 2? Right here, negative 3 and a positive 5. So do your two sets of parentheses. We see that we've got x squared there, so I make those an x. I've got a negative 3, so that's minus 3, and a positive 5, so plus 5. And there it is factored. The better you are at your multiplication facts, the easier that these are going to be. And sometimes you're not even going to need to write out on the side the factors of 15. Sometimes you'll just know exactly what it is. Let's look at example 4. Now we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us negative 18 and add to give us a negative 7. So let's see, what are the factors of negative 18? Well, 18 is 1 and 18, 2 and 9, and 3 and 6. Now this time they're adding to give us a negative number, so I know the bigger number needs to be negative. And now I need to see which one adds up to give us negative 7. Well, that's going to be 2 and negative 9. So do your two sets of parentheses, and that gives us x plus 2, because that was a positive 2, and then x minus 9, because that was a negative 9. And there's your answer in factored form. All right, let's look at example 5. So right here, we were looking for two numbers that multiplied to give us 28 and add to give us negative 11. So the factors of 28 are 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 4 and 7. And notice how I go in order so that I don't leave any out. Okay, so notice I did 1, then 2, then 4. All right, now we want these numbers to multiply to give us a positive 28, but add to give us a negative 11. Well, in order for you to add two numbers for it to be a negative and multiply to give you a positive, both of those numbers need to be negative. And then we're looking for negative 11, and there it is, negative 4 and negative 7. So do your two sets of parentheses, and then put the x in front. And because it's a negative 4, we write minus 4. Because it's a negative 7, we write minus 7. And there it is. All right, example 6. Now we are solving. We need to solve. So remember back whenever we did our GCF, whenever we solve, the first step is we want to make sure the equation is set equal to 0. So if we look here, we see this is not set equal to 0. So first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that 27. To do that, we subtract 27. So now on the left side, notice that I don't have any like terms to combine with that minus 27. So because I do not have any like terms, I'm going to write x squared plus 6x minus 27 equals 0. So first step was to set equal to 0. That's been done. The second step is to factor. Make sure that the other side has been factored. So if we look at the left side, we see that that has not been factored. So we need to think of two numbers that multiply to give us a negative 27 and add to give us a positive 6. So think, what are those two numbers that multiply to give you negative 27 and add to give us a positive 6? Now understand one's going to be negative and the other one's going to be positive. Because this is a positive 6, that means our bigger number is going to be positive. So you should have come up with a negative 3 and a positive 9. All right, so our third step into solving is to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to set the first factor, x minus 3, equal to 0, and x plus 9 equal to 0. And then we solve each one of these. So I add 3 to both sides, and that gives you x equals 3. Subtract 9 on both sides, and 0 minus 9 is negative 9. So your solution here is 3 and negative 9. All right, let's look at example 7. So let's recall our steps. The first step is to set it equal to 0. Is this equal to 0? No, it's equal to 70. So we need to get rid of that 70. To do so, we subtract 70 from both sides. So we look over on the left side, and none of those are like terms, nothing that we can combine. So I'm going to write x squared minus 3x minus 70. We're going to keep it in that standard form, equals 0. Our second step is to factor. So let's look at the left side, do our two sets of parentheses, and factor. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us negative 70 and add to give us negative 3. So those two numbers should be a positive 7 and a negative 10. And it doesn't matter which one you put first. You could put the negative 10 where the 7 is and the 7 where the negative 10 is. It doesn't matter. And then equals 0. And then our third step is to set each one of those equal to 0 and solve. So x plus 7 equals 0, x minus 10 equals 0, and then we solve them. So right here we would subtract 7 from both sides, and x equals negative 7. Right here we would add 10 to both sides, and x equals 10. So our two solutions here would be negative 7 and 10. All right, that's it for factoring x squared plus bx plus c. Please be ready for your notes check tomorrow.